Hey y'all, it's your girl, Anana, and I wanted to talk about fear. So I think fear is something that inhabits all of us in some shape or form, and that although it seems to be so familiar, it can really be so destructive. Um, and I think one of the worst things we can do is not see how expensive it can be. And I say this, and I'm totally talking to I'm actually literally talking to myself, but I am also talking. You just so you know, I'm also talking to myself, but I also am literally talking to myself. Okay. But yeah, I know it can be very, very self-consuming, and that is also because it's important to realize that those thoughts are basically made from us. Those are literally thoughts that are made from our own psyche. So it knows us better than it knows anything else. And it knows patterns that we have yet to visit and overcome. And what I mean by that is like in terms of trauma, in terms of things that we hold on to, like you hold on to a certain narrative that explains maybe how a certain situation happened in the past and how you don't want to face that again. And now the way you're holding on to it in terms of prevention for your future self is through fear. When in reality, you're really just keeping yourself to learn from it. And again, I'm talking to myself. And one thing I come to realize is how overwhelmingly eating me alive these thoughts can be, and literally eating you alive, because it's literally taking you away from trying things in your life. And that's something that's really important for us to realize is, to which extent do you give that power? To which extent do you let that take over and define you? And one thing that actually is so important about identity, I don't know if you've noticed, in terms of history, a lot of things have been done to people by defining their identity. And how is that? Well, when your identity is defined, you already have barriers and limits of what you should be. And so that becomes kind of like a placebo effect. Like now you are basically being defined by your environment, defined by the law, defined by gender norms, whichever it is. So when you take someone, for instance, and you carve them out of their memory and you force them into a certain identity, forces you to become that thing that you're so focused on. So why am I saying this is that now if you take into consideration fears, the more and more we gravitate towards those fears, those doubts and insecurities, and define ourselves and carve ourselves into that, the more centered into that we are, the more these things become our truth and reality. Anywho, and that's something that I know for me is very scary. Like it's one of actually like the things that I try to make myself more accountable for, is standing out of my fears, because at the end it's really just me standing in my own way, and trying not to let that define my reality, because in moments say that it gets very emotional, and that I don't feel that I am sufficient, I'll eat that. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and shower. And I know it's toxic. No way. Yeah. Yeah, girl. No. Yeah, it is. And it forces me also to, you know, realize where I'm projecting. Okay? Let me put this into context. So, say you're scared of being judged as, I don't know, insufficient. Oh, okay. Uh, Now things that you'll maybe you do, in terms of just like a protection mechanism, is you'll project that onto other people as if other people are thinking that, but really it's just yourself. So you might walk into a situation and be like, people are looking at me, or like, oh, you might walk into a situation and feel or say, oh, that person is that person thinks I'm insufficient, but when in reality it's you're projecting how you're feeling about yourself onto someone else when that person is really going through their own thing. But I think it's important to know that even in those moments, like, say me, I still have a certain power. So whether that is where I bring my attention, where I bring my energy, counter thoughts. So like, say the thought is I am insufficient. No, I'm feeling insufficient at the moment, but I have to know that I am not. I am learning. I am growing, and that's like probably one of the easiest one to say and hardest to do. I'll say for me at least. I can only speak for myself at the moment. In life, actually, in general, but whatever. I just miss. Back to the show. That's like one of the hardest things, to do within a moment. So it would be false for me to just say, hey, just do that and you'll be all right. Major key alert. Like, it don't work like that. It's tools, but I know in that moment, it can be very much of a spiral. So things that work for me is just literally getting that in motion. So say if I'm feeling some type of way, and I find myself in a static position, literally going for a walk. It might not be everything, but it's something. And it's in those moments specifically that you need to be reminded of how to love. So a lot of times what happens when we feel fearful, when we feel anxious, when we feel when we feel doubtful, when we feel like panic mode, is that we'll tear ourselves down because it's an easier route, especially in those moments, because there's already so many black clouds. I don't know why I'm talking like clouds, black clouds. But in those moments, you're still you. So that way you're talking to yourself, it's still the same person as in when you're doing well. So how are we teaching ourselves to unconditionally love ourselves? How is that teaching yourselves that in those moments, oh no, those are just signs that I just forgot how to love myself right now. I can't do it. So you're going to have to take care of it, baby girl, baby boo thing. Like this is literally what we have to do. This is literally how we call for that. And it's really crazy. It's like this quote I saw, mother ourselves, right? So the same way a mother would come recomfort and actually take care and bring that care and unconditional love, like, is the same way we have to do for ourselves, especially in those moments. Like, you're your ride or die, like literally stuck with yourself, and especially the mind and the thoughts. So learning and understanding that, hey, okay, I can see this is triggering me, this is agitating me, this is upsetting me, I am feeling such and such way. Being aware of our feelings so that we can understand how to maneuver through, because feelings, emotions are really just like signals. They're telling us something is going on, but oftentimes we get just caught up into those emotions and attached to them, and this is where it's dangerous. This is where we're not letting them actually flow, and we're like huge channels. So it's important to let that flow, and not only say inside of yourself and in terms of thoughts, but also physically. Like, it's so important to just move and let our body actually feel that, but not just seep and sit into it as if we are staying and sticking with it and holding on to it, because then it's like your brain is going to try to do everything to confirm how that is a truth, when it's not your truth, it's just how you are feeling. Like, you're not the emotion, you're yourself, but you're experiencing the emotion. And how can you just move through this experience is to understand how you're feeling. And for some people, they'll be better able to understand how they're feeling sitting down, being, just resting, writing, talking. For me, I need to move, walk, think, write, and try to let that flow. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. Like, I'm saying this, like, I'm feeling good right now. Like, as I get really to say, because I'm feeling, it's like 1 a.m. I'm not hyped. I am not sad, feeling sad. I am not sadness. You see, that's the thing. You're not the emotion. You're experiencing it. So if I keep talking to myself as in like, I am this, I am that, then it's more and more I will also move towards that. Like, my whole biology would be like, we're what now? All right, let's go for a ride. All right, everybody, we're sad. What? We're sad? I thought we were just happy. Well, apparently we're sad. You're going to have to keep up. And then your old cells are like, damn, all right, all right, all right. Oh, yeah, I can see that. I can see it. I can conceive this. This is truth. This is pure. And, you know, and I mean, I don't know how your body does it, but this is pretty much how it breaks down, okay? I'll avoid you and spare you all the science terms, but it's pretty much what's happening. So, like, kind of also thinking and allowing ourselves, okay, how do I gain that power? How do I still remain who I am and not forget that who I am is also valuable and valuable enough for me to care, to do an act of care for myself. So, I started with fear and ended with an act of care. So in moments of doubts and moments of fear, a lot of times we need that act of care. And a lot of times too, like, it will take that act of care for us to actually go and do that thing that's scary to us. And then when it comes to limitations, like, can you imagine how costly it is to live life full of fear? Like, to live life and letting fear, like, literally thoughts that are like trying to take you down and thoughts that are basically not wanting the best for you take over. And I know it's easy to say like this, but when you really look at it, like, it's kind of like trying to protect us from what? And that's so important. It's like, are those thoughts, fears, protective, or are they keeping you from living? Are those thoughts protective, meaning, I mean, don't cross the highway naked, walking or are those thoughts keeping you from change? And that's something that's very big, because we are innately afraid of change. Like, in your human nature is afraid of change because it likes homeostasis. It's not made for it. You're made, okay, yes and no. You are made so adaptable and gratefully for change. But we are afraid of change by nature. Like, our whole body will kind of like always like to have that loop, and especially that loop that like has been there for so long, and that like that has been our truth, and that has been like what you usually go to, comfort, right? Especially in terms of thoughts. Like, think about it, like your whole neurons already know what to think when you're going down that spiral. Is probably often the same thoughts, because it knows the what's and the where that you need to go, either to explore, understand why you're thinking like this, or like those thoughts that are actually like, these are trigger words, right? So it's often the same things and those loops. And why are they there? Like, because it's also allowing you to have a certain box. Now think about it, like, what does that box do for you? What are those limitations? Are you constantly moving towards limitations that keep you from change that is destructive? Or is it keeping you from change just in general and keeping you from growth? And that's one thing that It's hard. It's hard, and it's hard to keep ourselves accountable for. But whether you believe you can do a thing or not, you're right. So, yeah. And that's one thing too, is like fears can also be fuel, right? Like you could be afraid of living with regret and use that to like actually, push yourself past, that comfort zone. But how are we using that fear? How are we using those fears just in general? Are we using them for growth? Are we using them for limitations, for comfort? And especially when it comes down to comfort, how are you challenging that? And these are things that are very important and questions to ask ourselves. So take this as, I guess, as self-reflection. And that's really kind of touching the surface, because it kind of went into two ways of seeing fear. But do be mindful that those fears, although they can be thoughts, these are expensive. And it literally costs lives. So allow yourself, to accept where you are, to selves. Accept where you are, accept wanting to move forward, but also accept that will take a part of you to die in order for you to move forward. And if that is the fear, then it's worth every sacrifice, because at least you'll just discover more of yourself. So there's basically more life on that side. So that's it for tonight. This is me, Bear, Stinkschlein, bedtime. And I hope that this allows you to push some reflections, and not be afraid of your experiences. Like, I think we all go through a lot of things, and although social media can make it seem as if, those things are things you shrug easily, it's not at all. So, but you can still smile about it. But yeah, it's not at all. So do keep yourself empowered through your process, and really try to rise up always, and discover more of yourself, because there's so much to you. Yeah. All right. So on this note, good night and see you next time. Oh, and don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and yeah, comment please. Like, let me know what you think. What are some questions you feel like asking yourselves? How do you define fear? How do you define doubt? And what fear has been the most costly for you, or repetitive even? And how are you keeping yourself accountable? Because it's not wrong to have them. It's just being aware. So this is just me sharing, and hopefully that helps you. And I guess this is good night. And take care. Rise up and stay empowered.